Welcome back to BlackDad and Phil Doddard. Hello, horror fans. It's me, the BlackDad, and tonight we're diving deeper into the nightmare world of 13 Ghosts. Now, one of the ghosts that always stuck with me wasn't just scary, he was massive, a towering figure of rage and chains who could tear a person apart with his bare hands. I'm talking about Horace Mahoney, the Juggernaut. But as always, the film only gave us glimpses. His backstory, his true legend, was never fully told. So tonight, we're going to change that. This is not a retelling. This is a reimagining. A way to honor a film that inspired me, and to give the Juggernaut the lore he deserves. Let's begin.
Part 1. Original lore. Horace Breaker. Mahoney was a giant of a man, born grotesquely large, feared by everyone, even his own family. His father ran the Mahoney junkyard, and Horace grew up working among twisted steel and rusting cars. Isolated, brutal, cruel. When his father died, Horace inherited the yard, and with it, a taste for blood. He lured hitchhikers, sex workers, and drifters to the yard with promises of help. Once inside, he murdered them savagely, tearing bodies apart with his bare hands. Over the years, he killed 9 people, though many believe the number was far higher. Police finally set a trap. A full SWAT team stormed the junkyard. Horace resisted, and it took more than a dozen officers unloading their guns to bring him down. But death didn't stop him. In the afterlife, Horace's spirit grew even stronger. His towering form, his chains, his rage still stalked the yard. This was the birth of the Juggernaut, but the story you know is only half the truth. Part 2. Expanded lore. In the late 1980s, the mob had a man they called Jake the Maker. He wasn't a shot caller, he wasn't a soldier. His talent was uglier. Jake made people vanish. His kingdom was the Mahoney junkyard. By then, it was a sprawling maze of rust and shadows. Stacks of cars rising like tombstones, oil drums leaking into the dirt, mountains of twisted steel piled higher than houses. People whispered the yard was cursed, haunted by its last heir, Horace Mahoney. They called him the Juggernaut. The Mahoney family never admitted it, but workers swore they heard heavy footsteps echoing across the gravel when the place was empty, chains rattling when no wind blew, shadows shifting between the cars. At first, Jake ignored the stories. He killed the old way, breaking down bodies himself and scattering them in the wreckage. But one night changed everything. 7 of his men disappeared into the far corner of the yard. Jake heard it happen, screams echoing through the stacked cars, steel twisting and snapping like bones, the wet sound of flesh ripping, then silence. When he returned the next morning, there were no bodies, only mangled heaps of wreckage, bloodless, shapeless, as if the men had been folded into the junk itself. Jake remembered the whispers, the Juggernaut, and instead of running, he saw opportunity. From then on, he stopped dirtying his hands. He dragged problems into that corner and left them. Always the same, the thunder of footsteps, the rattle of chains, the shriek of tearing steel, then silence. Jake told himself the ghost was his weapon, his hound. He trusted it, he loved it. And eventually, his son grew up in that shadow. Jake's son wasn't born for the mob, but he wanted to prove himself. He knew what his father did, and he wanted to make the family name mean something more. So he brought a camcorder into the junkyard. Night after night, he filmed the deaths from a distance. To him, the Juggernaut wasn't horror. It was spectacle. He called the ghost better than a trained hound, a monster on a leash, and he didn't keep the footage to himself. He sold the tapes as snuff films, making money from the nightmare. Each tape caught the same things: shadows shifting between the cars, footsteps in the gravel when no one was there, the faint rattle of chains in the dark. But the boy wanted more than scraps. He wanted the perfect shot, and one night, chasing a better angle, he stepped too far.
The camcorder tape. You hear that? That's him? Better than a trained hound. He knows the line. He never crosses. See, but he's there. Always there. Okay, that's new. He's closer tonight. I'm not scared. He doesn't touch me. He knows... Dad.
Back to Jake's point of view. When the tape ended in static, the junkyard was silent. But Jake had heard enough. He ran into the yard, calling his son's name. The shadows between the cars seemed to shift as he passed. Heavy footsteps echoed, circling him. Chains rattled in the dark, moving closer, always closer. Jake shouted for his son, promising anything: money, power, even his own life. He wasn't the maker anymore. He was just a father, desperate to save the only thing he cared about. But the Juggernaut had already chosen, and Jake's pleas meant nothing. What he found was no body, only scraps of fabric, bent steel, blood soaking into the dirt. His son had been folded into the wreckage just like the others. And then the footsteps stopped. Jake realized the silence wasn't mercy. It was hunger. The Juggernaut wanted more. That was the last time anyone saw Jake the Maker. The truth was this: Jake hadn't been the master at all. He had only been feeding Horace Mahoney, the Juggernaut. The giant haunted his family's yard, tearing apart anyone foolish enough to cross his boundary. Jake thought he was using the ghost, but the ghost was using him. And yet, even in death, Jake's arrogance had consequences. His bragging, his stories, his little sport. They caught the ear of a man who understood more than Jake ever could. Cyrus Criticos. Where others saw a haunted junkyard, Cyrus saw a weapon. Where others heard footsteps in the dark, Cyrus heard opportunity. He studied the patterns, the screams, the twisted wreckage left behind. He waited, he prepared, and when the moment was right, he came with spells and chains, with glass etched in runes. The Juggernaut fought, howling with a force that shook the earth. Steel bent, chains snapped. But in the end, even a giant cannot resist forever. Horace Mahoney, breaker of bodies, terror of the junkyard, was bound. No longer a free spirit, but a prisoner of the Black Zodiac. And there, his rage only grew. Because some ghosts are never meant to be caged.
That was the story of Horace Mahoney, the Juggernaut. Feared in life, unstoppable in death, and forever chained to the Black Zodiac. This has been my expanded lore, straight from my imagination, honoring one of my favorite horror films. If you enjoyed this nightmare, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Which ghost should we explore next? The Juggernaut is only one, and 11 more still wait their turn.